Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Ayin Dalid Amid Aleph. At the very top, the first Mishnah in the 7th parak. The first Mishnah in the previous parak opens up the 6th parak by saying that when Yudali comes out to be on Shabbos, the Korban Pesach is Doiches HaShabbos. You're able to shecht the Korban Pesach on Shabbos. However, the Mishnah goes on to say, you cannot roast the meat on Shabbos. That should be done Motzei Shabbos. Our Mishnah begins the 7th parak discussing the procedures for roasting the meat. The Pasuk states, Al toichlu mimenu na uvashel mevusha b'mayim. You shall not eat the Korban Pesach when it is cooked in water. Ki im tzli eish roishoy al krov v'al kirboy. Rather, it must be roasted on the fire. Ask the Mishnah right away, Keitzad soilin es ha-Pesach. How does then one roast the Korban Pesach? Says the Mishnah, Mevin shipud shel rimoin. He takes a spit from a branch of the pomegranate tree. V'tochvoy l'toich piv. Ad beis nekuvasoy. And he sticks it inside of the mouth of the gedi, till it leaves all the way to the hole on the other end, so that the thicker part is going to be at the end of the mouth, whereas the thinnest part will then come out from the other side. V'noisen es krov es b'nei me'av l'toichoi. Div Rabbi Yosef Glili. Rabbi Yosef Glili says then it's roasted with the legs that are together with the innards inside in the stomach of the animal. Rabbi Akiva Oimer Kimin Bishul Huzeh. That would appear to be like bishul, as if you're cooking in a pot, if it's going to be in the inside of the animal. Therefore, says Rabbi Akiva, Ella Toilin Chutzoloi. You keep it and you hang it, so to speak, outside on the outer part of the animal. The Mishnah goes on to say, Ein Soilin Esat Pesach Lo Lashpud Lo Asakla. You shall not then roast the Korban Pesach on a metal spit or on a grill. The Gemara will explain why. Rabbi Tzadok says, Maise beram Gamliel she'omer letavi avdoi. Gamliel, he told his servant, his slave Tavi, Tzei v'tzalei lonu es ha-Pesach al askala. He instructed him to indeed go out and roast the Pesach on an askala. So here, the Gemara will have to explain, how does this fit into what the Gemara Mishnah just had said, that it's prohibited to roast the Korban Pesach on an askala. Then the Mishnah brings a Maisa that's lister, a Maisa that's the opposite, saying that indeed Rabbi Gamliel instructed his slave Tavi to roast the Korban Pesach on the askala. The Gemara will have to explain how that works in the Mishnah. Ask the Gemara right away, V'neisi shel mateches. Why not use a typical spit of a metal spit? Answers the Gemara, Aidi decham mikzosoy cham kuloi. The Gemara brings a principle. Since part of the metal, when it gets heated up, it will then heat up the rest of the metal. That means when the fire goes onto the metal that is outside, that is on either ends, that are exposed to the fire, they will then heat up those metal that is inside the animal, whereby it's not going to be the animal that's being roasted by the fire, but rather it's going to be heated up and cooked by the mateches of the spit. As the Gemara says, v'kamatvei machmas hashpud, and therefore it's going to be roasted by the shpud, by the spit, and not by directly the fire. V'rachman omar tzli eish. The hakpara of the Torah is that it be then roasted on fire, and here it's going to be roasted with the mateches of the spit. Ask the Gemara, v'neisi shel dekel. Okay, it can't be made with a metal spit, but why not with a other type of wood, different type of tree? Why erimoin? Here the Gemara asks, why don't we use a dekel tree, the wood of that type of tree, the palm tree? Answers the Gemara, because I did the isle shibe mapik maya vavik mevushal. Since there are grooves on the wood of this dekel tree. Therefore, the water, after it's being heated up, that was going to be inside, will then come out and will cause a bishul of the meat. And that's therefore prohibited. It has to be dafka, roasted. Ask the Gemara, v'nesi shel te'ena. Okay, so why not use the wood of a fig tree? Answer the Gemara, because I did the mechalchel mapik maya v'havalei k'mevushal. Since it's hollow and soft, there are saps that are going to then come out, and then the moisture will come out, and then again it will cause the meat to be cooked instead of completely being roasted. Ask the Gemara, v'nesi shel aloin, shel charuv v'shel shikma. Why not use other types of wood? The wood of an oak tree, or the wood of a carob tree, or the wood of a sycamore tree. Answers Gemara, because I did the isbe kitre mapik maya, because they have knots that are protruding from the outside of these trees that have to be then cut off, shaved off, in order to be used as a spit. So then they will also then cause water to then, or liquid to then come out, and again that will cook the meat instead of it being completely roasted. Says the Gemara, shall rimoy nami then isbe kitre. If that's the problem with those trees that we just mentioned, then also the wood of the rimoin, of the pomegranate, will also have the same problem. They also have these types of knots that have to be then cut off, shaved off, which will then cause lichluch, the water, the lachluchis rather, to then come and mevashel the meat. Answer the more shie kitri. The Gemara answers that here it's smooth, and therefore it doesn't have to be shaved off. It can be used as a spit without it being cut off. That's one answer. V'ibois emo benavoga bar shosa the lesbe kitre. Or we're talking about where it's 1 year old, whereby it doesn't have any of these knots. And presumably all of these other trees, even if it's just 1 year old, still has these protrusions, these knots. Ask the Gemara, va'ika bepiske. But still, even if you're going to use the wood of the rimoin, of the pomegranate, when you cut it from the tree, so then that itself will then have lachluchis, which will indeed cause the animal to also be cooked with. Answer is the word, the mapik lebepiske lebar. That's going to be the part which can go outside of the mouth of the animal, and therefore it's not going to be involved in the process of roasting its meat. The Gemara, after explaining that shbud that is going to be used of a pomegranate, the Gemara now explains that who's the opinion of our Mishnah says it has to be dafka with such a pomegranate spit. Masnisin de loike Rabbi Yehuda. Our Mishnah is not the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya, for it states in the Brisa, Rabbi Yehuda oimer kishem sheshpud shel eitz eino nisraf kach shpud shel mateches eino martiach. Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that you could, yes, use a spit that is of metal. Why? He says that since you would put a spit of a wood inside the animal, and just like that part that is inside the animal does not become burnt because the animal protects it, so too the spit, when you put it, if it's going to be mateches, going to be metal, so the animal will protect it, whereby it's going to be ultimately only roasted by the fire. Amruloi, the Chachamim retorted back to Rabbi Yehuda, Zeh cham miktsosoi cham kula v'zeh cham miktsosoi eino cham kula. The difference is when it comes to the spit that is mateches, that is metal, when you heat up part of it, either end, it then causes the rest of the shpud, of the spit, to also become heated up. Whereas when it comes to the wood, it doesn't affect the rest of the wood. The Gemara now quotes the Mishnah V'noisen as Krov. We found a machlokes in our Mishnah when it comes to how we roast the carbon Pesach. According to the first opinion, which is Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, he says that you take the legs, the krov, as well as the innards that have been taken out, and then you put it back inside of the stomach when roasting the carbon Pesach. Rabbi Akiva argues, and he says that has then the appearance that you're cooking it, just like you would put it inside of a pot. Whereby he says, no, you take the legs as well as the innards, and you keep it outside of the animal when you are then roasting the meat. The Gemara now brings a brisa, Tanya, Rabbi Yishmael karehu toich toich. Rabbi Yishmael, he calls it toich toich, that means that you put it inside, just like the sheet of Rabbi Gamliel in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yossi Haglili in our Mishnah, that you take the innards and the legs and you put it inside. When it then becomes completely boiled up, then it will make a sound of toich toich. Rabbi Tarfon kareyu gidi mekulas. Rabbi Tarfon, he calls it gidi mekulas. Gidi mekulas means that you're taking the innards and the legs and you're putting it by the word mekulas as a head covering. That means to say that just like the community of Rabbi Akiva, you're taking those innards and the legs and you're putting it outside of the animal to roast it together with the animal. The pasuk in the Navi in Shmuel says v'koiva nechoshes. On that, the Targum explains that's a reference to that it's a mekulas. That means to say the koiva, which is referring to the helmet of Goliath, that itself was considered to be the word mekulas, and therefore so too over here you take the innards and the legs and you put it over the head of the animal when you're roasting it. The Gemara goes on to bring up the following. Brisa says, Tan Rabbanan, the Gemara brings, Ezu gedi mekulas, da asu lechom belel Pesach bizman hazeh. What is the gedi mekulas that makes it prohibited to be eaten on Leila Pesach during this time when we don't have a Beis HaMikdash? Back in the Gemara earlier, the Gemara on Daf Nun Gimel stated that Rabbi Yos, that Toidos Ish Roimi, he was a prominent Jewish person who lived in Rome. He instructed the people of his community to eat Gedim Mekulosim on Leil Pesach. The Chachamim then sent him a message that if it wasn't for you, who was a prominent, distinguished Jew, then Gozarnu Alecha Nidui, we put you in excommunication. Why? Because you are causing Klal Yisrael to then bring what appears to be Kachim Bachutz. So the Gemara is now asking over here by us, what is considered to be a Gedi Mekulas that makes it also prohibited to eat on Leil HaSeder? Answers the Brisa Kol Shetzloi Kuloi Ke'echad. If it's going to then be roasted all together, then it's going to be considered to be a Gedi Mekulas, which is also Nechtach Mimenu Eiver, Nishlach Mimenu Eiver, Ein Ze Gedi Mekulas. The Brisa goes on to say, if a limb was severed and it was then cooked, it was boiled, that limb that was taken off, then it's not going to be considered to be a Gedi Mekulas. Ad kan the Brisa, ask the Gemara in the Brisa, Hashta yesh loymar nechtach mimenu ever. Now that we learned in the Brisa, by severing one of the limbs, that also makes it so it's incomplete, it's not considered to be now a Gedi Mekulas, then the afagav the kam matvei lei behadei amisloi, and you said even though it's going to be roasted together, it's all going to be roasted together as one, it still is not going to be considered a Gedi Mekulas, which is osir. Then nishlach miboy, then taking that aver and then boiling it, is that need to be stated? Certainly that's not going to be then a Gedi Mekulas. You already severed it. So once you already severed it, it's already not going to be good. If you're going to ahead sever it and then boiled it, certainly it's not going to be good. Answers the Gemara Rav Sheishes, Shesholku mechubar. We're talking about when he boiled it, when it was still mechubar. That means the entire animal was complete. That he took one limb, and that one limb he boiled it. So even though the rest is going to be roasted, but since he boiled that one limb, it's considered to be a gedi that's not mekulas, and that will then no longer be prohibited on Leil HaSeder.